All right, here we go. This is Shawn Michaels, My Journey DVD. It's getting pretty good reviews. A lot of great feedback so far. Obviously, I think the selling point of this DVD is the Michael Cole, Shawn Michaels sit-down interview between each and every match. You get to see Michael Cole and Shawn Michaels, interact with each other. Shawn talks very candidly, very seriously. It's a very serious DVD, actually, and it's very candid. It's non-kayfabe. Everything is straight from the heart, and I really enjoyed it. Now I'll talk about some of the things Shawn talked about and some of the matches. Obviously, some of the matches most of you guys have seen a million times, so I won't really go into depth with the WrestleMania matches and some of the recent stuff. But all right, let's get right down to it. Shawn talks about how he started out at 19 years old. He was afraid and he was very young. Then he got an opportunity to work in world-class championship wrestling in Texas at the Dallas Sportatorium against a one-man gang. This is kind of a squash match, but it was pretty cool to see Shawn Michaels very young in the ring with the big monster, the one-man gang. So that was okay. Next up, the AWA had their version of WrestleMania, and they paired the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels up to face Buddy Rose and Doug Summers. We've seen Marty and Shawn face these guys in the past. And this is like the typical young baby faces versus the old really selfish heels, and that's pretty much what it was. This match was decent. It wasn't great, but it wasn't anything like the blood match that they had back in from the Shawn Michaels from the Vault DVD. So next up, you had the Rockers versus the Nasty Boys from AWA. Supposedly Shawn says they were really good friends with the Nasty Boys, and they had pretty good chemistry. And so they had a match in AWA that they put on here. It was okay. Next up, we get to see Shawn and Marty Jannetty in the WWF. The Brain Busters actually requested to work with the Rockers. They thought they could have great matches with them, and they had a great match with a pretty good match with the Brain Busters from 1989. It was not on the same level as the Hart Foundation match against the Brain Busters, but this is pretty good. Once again, I think a lot of these matches in the 80s, they ended in disqualification, so they could have been a lot better than what they really were. But the tag team scene was phenomenal in the late 80s, and that was just a vintage tag team match right there. Then we get Rockers vs. Hart Foundation from 1989. Shawn talked about how great the Rockers and Hart Foundation worked together, how they had you had a great combination of talent, because you have Bret that could still go, and then you have a big man in the Anvil. So they did make it for a great combination. This ended in another disqualification, but this is probably their best match. It went a little bit longer than the other matches that I saw from them. So next up, we had the Rockers versus the Hart Foundation. Well, I'm sorry. Finally, Shawn Michaels going solo. Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. Talked about how nervous he was about the solo thing and everything like that. And he talked about how Bret was really nice to him at first. That Bret likes to be more in control. He likes to be more of a teacher, and so that's why the relationship worked at first. So yeah, him and Shawn, Bret and Shawn had a great match at a house show in Ontario back in June of 1992. I thought it was very good. Still really good stuff there, like 3 3/4 stars for me. So then he talks about Davey Boy Smith and how he had a really good relationship with the British Bulldog. Then they showed a British Bulldog match from Raw. That was, I thought it would be a little bit better. Psycho Sid got involved, so it could have been a little bit better. Then he talked about how it was kind of tough to work with Sid, but at the same time, it's working with big men. It comes very natural to Shawn Michaels because the story's told immediately as soon as you guys get into the ring. And him and Sid had a good match. Shawn went over Sid. It was okay. It wasn't on the same level as their Survivor Series match, but it was pretty good. Then he had a match against the 1-2-3 Kid before WrestleMania 12, and this is just a really fun match. They were kind of fooling around out there, but it was pretty good action. Bret was actually on commentary, which did not really go that well, but I enjoyed this match a lot. 1-2-3 Kid, Sean Waltman and Shawn Michaels were pretty good friends at the time, so I guess that's why it worked out so well. Then Shawn talked about how he was the WWF champion. And while he was the champion, he was really stressed out because he knew, like, if he didn't succeed this time, if this championship run did not succeed, then Vince McMahon would have said, I told you so. And, it would kind of prove his point, that the smaller guys really can't carry the ball. So that's why Shawn was under a lot of pressure. But he did enjoy being in the ring every single moment during that title reign, even though he was stressed out. So it talked about how Mankind and him had great chemistry, and you know that's what he needed. He needed Mick Foley to kind of bring the best out of him. So they showed a match with him and Mankind from 1997. It was pretty good, but you know this is the start of the whole Degeneration X thing. This is where they kind of formed. I think Rick Rude came out and Triple H came out. So yeah, that was a pretty good match. It was pretty brutal, and like I said, the start of Degeneration X, and then we had the British Bulldog match from One Night Only. This match was crazy because it was pretty much a riot after the match because, you know, and it worked. You know, the Shawn Michaels took the European belt off of British Bulldog with the help of DX. The crowd was throwing trash in the ring, and Shawn was very proud of this moment because he felt like he legitimately had very good heat, you know. And you know, he talked about how him and the Undertaker have great chemistry. The Undertaker is so great because not only is he a big man, but he could actually go. You know, he kind of implied that the Undertaker is a bigger version of Shawn Michaels, and I guess that's why those two guys make such a great combination. And they showed the casket match from the Royal Rumble. You know, I have mixed feelings about this match because I really wished, you know, that Shawn didn't get hurt here because, you know, would have been really interesting to see, you know, just how great the Attitude Era could have been if Shawn sticked around. So, you know, then he talked about, you know, what drove him to come back, and then he had his great match with Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 19. You know, put over Jericho pretty well, and you know, the WrestleMania 19 match was, you know, just a case to see if Shawn Michaels could still go because he had a lot of doubts before that match. And you know, then he talked about how it was so special to be in the ring with Ric Flair, and they showed the Bad Blood match between him and Ric Flair from 2003. Now, this match, Shawn didn't talk about it on the DVD, but I particularly remember that Shawn was pissed off that this match got so little time, and I believe Shawn had the flu during this time. So I mean, this was pretty good action while it lasted. I thought the table spot was kind of unnecessary, but really fun match right there. Randy Orton got involved and costed Shawn Michaels the win. And, you know, he talked about Kurt Angle and how, you know, the WrestleMania match with Kurt Angle was the first time where Shawn was kind of intimidated. He felt like he had to up his conditioning, you know, just to make sure that, you know, he could keep up with Kurt Angle. And that makes a lot of sense because Kurt Angle is definitely a monster on the mat. So, yeah, and I thought him and Angle had an excellent match. That was a dream match of mine for a while, and I was really happy to see that. You know, then he talked about Hulk Hogan, how, you know, Hogan was kind of a dick. You know, Hogan wanted Shawn to actually act like the Shawn Michaels from 1997, but at the same time, Hogan would talk behind his back, and supposedly Shawn was supposed to go over at SummerSlam, but you know, Hogan politicked his way out of it and actually ended up getting the win at SummerSlam. So talked about that. Then they showed the great promo in Montreal on Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart, which is an excellent promo. You know, that's as close to the old Shawn Michaels as we got in the 2000s. So, yeah. All right, so next up we had the boot camp match in the Tribute to the Troop show. He faced Triple H. This is okay. I mean, you know, Shawn really got a thrill to go over there because, you know, he was raised, his dad was a military guy. You know, he was raised on an Air Force base, so you know, Shawn Michaels really appreciated the, you know, the chance to go over there. But you know, these matches, whenever the WWE went over there, they don't really focus that much on putting on great matches. It's just very cool for them to be out there, so they don't really have to do much. You know, as long as the crowd sees them, that's pretty much good enough for them. But you know, this is a generic match between Shawn and Triple H, probably one of their weakest matches. So, and then Shawn talked about, you know, how he feels like he feels a lot of pressure when he works with the younger guys like Cena, Edge, and Orton, because he feels like if he doesn't impress, then he feels like he will let those guys down, because you know he doesn't want Randy Orton to be disappointed with the way Shawn performed. So that was pretty interesting. And then they showed the Fatal 4-Way from Backlash. Personally, I thought this was the best WWE match of 2007, so I really enjoyed that. Great Fatal 4-Way match. Probably the best Fatal 4-Way in WWE history, in my opinion. Then they talked about, you know, Shawn and Randy Orton at Survivor Series, how great of a story this match was. You know, Shawn talked about, you know, winning the championship is really not his concern anymore. He really doesn't get a thrill out of wrestling for the championship. But he got a thrill out of this match because it told a great story, because Shawn could not use the super kick. So he thought that made for a really good story, and I do like this match, and I thought it did make for a great story. It definitely added to the match. It was something very different, and one of the highlights the WWE had in 2007 was this feud, in my opinion. So Then he talked about his family, how his family has really changed him, and that led to the very personal Chris Jericho Shawn Michaels feud. They showed the Unforgiven unsanctioned match, which was really good, really heated match. You could feel the hatred. I thought the whole Shawn Michaels Jericho feud from 2008 was phenomenal, and this match is just icing on the cake. I know Shawn was hurt for this match. This is probably one of the weaker matches from that feud, but it was still very good. That was when the feud was really hot after SummerSlam going into Unforgiven. So I really enjoyed that. And then he talked about Mr. WrestleMania, how he is Mr. WrestleMania. Uh, don't remember much about what he said, but then they showed Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Obviously, people are already hailing it as one of the greatest WrestleMania, if not the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. And you kind of leave with a bitter taste in your mouth. You kind of get the feeling that Shawn is on the way out. This possibly might be his last WrestleMania, which I hope it's not. I really hope that